I was born and raised in Philadelphia, single family home, single mother. My father passed when I was around 8 years old. Prior to that, I received honor roll school, straight in A's and B's school, the problems in the home, the problems in the community. They just jumped in the school field. So needless to say, I went through a lot of trauma early on that affected me that I didn't really understand then. In the course of my life, started changing throughout that time period. In and out of juvenile facilities, my first time being arrested, my mother sent me down to Virginia to stay with my uncle when I was 12. And white lady said I robbed a pistol with her. As soon as I got down there, and they arrested me, I was arrested for maybe a month before the lady admitted that all black people look alike to her. The judge threw the case out, and I was released. And unfortunately, I was in that institution though for 2 other times throughout the age of 12 and 13. And I came back to Philly, started getting, back then the drug culture was real heavy, the crack era, and it was a way to make easy money. And, getting caught up in that culture, individual I was selling drugs for in my community, he was older, he was 24, I was 15 at the time. We had a dispute over some drugs and some money that I felt was owed to me, and I had kept a package, and then some other individuals came and shot at me, which, led to me later shooting him, and I was charged with first-degree premeditated murder, which it wasn't premeditated, and sentenced to life. So, throughout that time of being incarcerated, prison is difficult for anybody, for a grown person, so for a child, being thrown in that environment and forced to navigate a world that, you don't know anything about. We find children out here in society, left on their own, they can't navigate the free world, so let alone, such a predatory environment and trauma-filled environment, so myself going through so much trauma as a kid, going in there, going through further trauma, it was difficult. But since I've been released, reentry is something that, no doubt we all happy to be home and enjoying life and having families. But reentry is not easy for anyone, let alone a child. Being in a cage their whole lives, and not only that, told that you're going to die in prison. And then to be just released, you find some of us that struggle more than others. Some have more help than others, more support than others, and that plays a major role. I was fortunate to have my mother, my sister, had a job lined up when I came home, had a youth citizen reentry project, as a support system even before I started working for them. But even with that, it was difficult. There's, rarely a month that goes by that my wife don't recommend that I need to do, like counseling and things like that. But the first time I tried therapy when I came home, that didn't work. The therapist was so traumatized just from, hearing my story, it's like she wasn't really effective at all in really, helping me in that regard, which kind of turned me off from therapy. But then, in a nutshell, I'm still dealing with, the struggles of reentry. I'm on lifetime parole, so trying to navigate that, housing. It's very difficult to find. I got to be strategic on where I find housing because I want to keep my same parole officer. So I got to find a house in the counties where he is. They're moving out of state. You don't want to move out of state because of different states. You don't know how they're going to deal with you being on parole. So, it's a lot of struggles, but at the same time, I'm grateful to be here and have this opportunity to fight from this side, because there's still a lot that, that needs to be changed.
So I was born to a 15-year-old mother who was born to an 11-year-old mother, and nobody really knew how to be a mother. And so it took a village to kind of step in. I was never a problem child. I was kind of quiet, stayed to myself. Much like he said, AB honor roll, stayed out of trouble. I was determined that I was going to try to do something different. I was going to try to do something different. Once I graduated from high school, I enrolled in community college to go to school to be the night before that kind of led up to my crime the next day. The guy that I was involved with maybe about 2 years prior, we all kind of knew him, and him and my cousin had a little dispute about him stealing his car radio system, and he was like, you know, can you come and take me over there? And so I went to take him over there, because I really didn't think anything of it. I didn't know that he had a gun. He testified that I didn't know he had a gun, but none of that still, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. And ultimately, we were tried jointly, we weren't tried separately, so that means that basically whatever they heard about him, they heard about me. And the verdict came back, guilty of felony first-degree murder, life without parole. So I went to prison, and, you know, either you're gonna get caught up in, the things that go on in prison, the drugs, the sex, you know, everything that goes along with, you know, the stigma of being in prison, or you're gonna make the choice to do the right thing. And so I chose to just kind of do the right thing, not even knowing if anything was gonna change, but just knowing that, like, this is where I have to be, and either I'm gonna make the decision to, you know, get in here and be crazy and go along to get along and go along to survive, or I'm gonna take the other road and I'm gonna try to, you know, get in classes, which is not easy, because when you're a lifer, or what they call a long-termer, then you're not the first pick for classes. You may not even be able to take classes depending on what institution you're incarcerated at. So it's like, you know, do something to show that, you know, you're trying to do that, you're trying to change, but you're not really given the opportunity. But thankfully, I was sent to Southern Correctional Institution, where you can take, you know, multiple classes, and so I began to just kind of give me classes, and people just kind of took me under their wings, whether it was, you know, other inmates that have been there for a long time, or whether it was staff that, you know, they were kind of like, oh, you're just a baby, you know, but I'm a baby that's confused. I'm a baby that's trying to figure out how to survive in here. I'm a baby that's like, you know, my whole world was literally snatched away from me. And I think another thing that Shariff talked about was the mental health part. Mental health and incarceration, it's just a mess. I tried therapy while I was in there, and basically, I kind of became a therapist to my therapist. Like, she didn't really know, you know, it's like, oh my God, I just want to grab you and hold you, but now I'm telling you that today I'm literally about to lose my mind in here. What are you talking about? You know, so the therapy thing, it really didn't work. It was a way for me to get off the unit. It was a way for me to get out of my cell for about an hour, and so I took advantage of that. But as far as just like really getting the mental health that I needed, it didn't work. It didn't work. I do think that I need to seek counseling now, but I think just from what you said, like that's my hesitation. Is like, can I find somebody who can really help me? Can I find somebody who can really understand what it is that I'm going through? Yes, I have the support of my family. They're there for me, but they can't really understand. And there are times that they forget that I was a child when I went to prison, and I did 20 years in prison, and I'm not used to being out here in the world. There's certain things that I still don't know how to do, or certain things that I don't know how to navigate. And I kind of have to be like, look, you know, I've been locked up, so y'all gonna have to work with me. So there's just so many things. Job-wise, it's hard to get a job. People say, there's many jobs available, you can get a job anywhere. Anybody got, that's not true. I had a job at Goodwill, which is also a second chance. They say they're second chance, but their second chance kind of depends on like what your crime is. And so they're not gonna go back and look at my case and say, oh, well, you know, she kind of wasn't the shooter, she wasn't really involved. This, you know, they're not gonna look at that. All they're gonna do is look at it and see that it says felony first-degree murder, and no. And basically that's what happened. I worked there for a little over a month. They called me in the office one day. They're like, you know, we like you, you're so nice and sweet and all of this, but none of that matters. Like, you can go to your locker, clean out your stuff, and you're dismissed. And that's the way it went. So, you know, it's hard to get a job. Thankfully, the lady, Ms. Linda Daniels, who I work for now for Speaking for the Speechless, she was trying to help me get out of prison when everything kind of started coming together, and she called me and was like, hey, you want to come work for me in my advocacy agency? And I'm like, yes, let's do it. So thankful to God for those opportunities and the love and the support that I do have, but reentry is definitely hard and it is definitely an issue.
I think, kind of picking up on something Kolanda you said, for the next question, is even when you're trying to do all the things that you're supposed to do, the system is really just set up against you, set up for people to fail. And I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about, the police and, being a kid, being charged with a crime, and, you know, many people are taught to trust the police and to like, do what you're supposed to do, but when you do that, that doesn't necessarily have a risk to yourself. So, wanted to do that.
Sure, I think like, you know, like you said, you're taught to trust the police, they're there to protect and serve. And so kind of when everything happened, I'm like, I'm just gonna go in here and I'm just gonna tell them what happened, you know, what did I do? Nothing. So, and they're like, we just want to talk to you, so just kind of tell us what happened, and so I began to tell them what happened, and I actually did not get arrested the same day. I got arrested like 2-3 weeks later. And so it never crossed my mind that like, hey, they're gonna come back and arrest me, you know, and so I'm kind of just telling them everything that happened, and I'm trusting that like, okay, I'm being honest with them, so I don't have anything to worry about, but that was not the case. It's kind of like we want to get anybody and everybody that we can point a finger at to say, you did this or you did that, and you're gonna go down too. So the trust factor for me, even now, like I see the police and my anxiety goes through the roof. You know, so that is like, as a child, you want to feel like that you can trust them and that they are there to protect you, and that they're gonna, you know, kind of work with you and be like, okay, you know, you told us the truth, this is what you said, and this is what happened, but they're gonna kind of take it and twist it and do what they want to do with it and make it look like, you know, you're guilty too, that's it, come on, let's go. You know, so, that trust factor is no longer there. No longer there.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, I grew up as a kid already having a distrust of the police in general. So, you know, as a kid growing up in the communities that I grew up in, I was always taught, you see shooters and stuff, you don't say anything. You know, my mom told me that as a kid, I would be out there playing, somebody gets shot, I come in the house, my mom tell me don't talk about it, don't go repeating it, other people say they seen it, you don't say nothing. You know, so I kind of, you know, as a young age, I already knew that the cops really wasn't, you know, in our communities helping any of us. You know, I experienced being arrested at 12, they lied to me. I didn't even know I was being arrested when they came and got me. I thought they was coming to get my uncle. Until I got in the car and got down here, right? So that, you know, and once I got once I got arrested and they questioned me about what happened, I didn't say anything. I didn't give any statement. They had me down there for maybe 2 days in the round house, and I didn't say anything. They brought my mom down there. She didn't say anything. And but I say that to say, when I went to prison, you know, when we speak about the police and the distrust of the police, going into the prison system, it made me really have a severe hatred towards people in authority. When you see the way that they beat and kill and torture people in those prisons, right? And when I was in there, it was it wasn't something that was concealed, right? I've been at, you know, maybe close to half of the state prisons in Pennsylvania throughout my 23 years of incarceration, fighting guards, stabbing guards, and getting kicked out from different institutions. And everywhere I went, it was like the same, it was the norm. It was like you had to be so violent in those places that when you come into a facility, they know who you are. The security tell the guards to leave. And even then, I would still have problems from time to time, right? And I seen guards in those environments and you know, encourage people to kill themselves. I seen guards in those environments, and they had an investigation when I was at the Supermax at SCI Green, where the guards were selling the prisoners the knives and the phones and stuff in the jail. So, you know, Central Office investigated it and put some hidden cameras, and it seen some guys go up there, come back with some laundry bags, and they was out there waiting to grab them. guard gave him a laundry bag, got knives and all kinds of guards. The security team in the jail was selling prisoners knives, right? So when you speak about law enforcement and they are out here, you know, it goes hand in hand. The only difference is, and there's more brutal, you know, out here when the cops shoot somebody or something like that, you know, it gets social media attention, public outrage. You know, in prison sometimes people don't even really know. You know, a person's family get murdered and they don't even know they was murdered. The jail favorite thing is they found them unresponsive or they committed suicide, or, you know, that's the norm. So, you know, regardless of the law, you know, law enforcement and things of that nature, in our communities, in the black communities, law enforcement has never been a positive thing. So for those that understand the history of how the police and all of that came about, yeah, it never had a place in our community in the sense of making our communities whole or bringing about safety. It always been what she said, that fear. You know, before I went to jail, cop, you know, I got a certain fear when cops approach me because they ain't approach me to see how I'm doing and talk to me, right? They come more than likely to accuse me of something or get me confused with somebody or what have you. So, you know, law enforcement, I think when people like myself and people that have been through the system speak about law enforcement, people tend not to really take it the same because all, you know, people from the streets, of course, they, you know, have a thing and a aversion against law enforcement. But I say that as someone that in the prison system, all the problems I had, and I got multiple convictions of like an outside courts in prison for assault and guard. I still had prison officials that came to court and testified for, you know, that, so you still have some humanity in those places. And they came and testified about my violence and putting it in the proper context as people that have been working in corrections since before I was even in here, right? So you have some within that system that have some humanity with them, but it's like you know, as a whole, you know, in our communities are in the penitentiaries, like, you know, when it comes to policing, there's nothing about it that makes me feel safe and secure, or it makes me feel trustworthy towards anybody from law enforcement on either side, you know. So even if I didn't do anything, if the cops come and ask me a question, I'm not even gonna answer it, 'cause they might be trying to set me up, even though I know I didn't do anything. You know, you gotta be leery, you get pulled over for a traffic stop, especially in places like Philadelphia. They pulled me over. I remember I first came home and just walked up in the car and reached in and started filling my waist and leave. What the hell is this, a search? Oh, just wanna make sure you don't have no weapons. That's a search, an illegal search. So, you know, in general, you know, police in our communities are not, yeah, it's not something that, is effective in the ways it is supposed to be.
I want to pick up on like something that, like I heard in what you were saying, which is like systemic violence, systemic state violence. And I kind of want to connect that to racism and thinking about how, we know that Black children and Black people in general are incarcerated at insane rates compared to white people. I was wondering if you guys wanted to speak a little bit about how the role of racism in the criminal system and how that intersects with your experience with people.
Well, I mean, you know, racism, no doubt, plays a role. I mean, you can't deny it when you look at, you know, the children, like in Philadelphia alone, or Pennsylvania alone, we had, I think it was like 90% or something, close to 90% of the children that was, you know, sentenced to mandatory life without parole, you know, was Black and brown children. So, you know, when you look at our communities, or, you know, Black communities in particular, since we have been in this country, there's always been some type of system put in place to keep our communities underprivileged, uneducated. And, you know, a lot of times when people speak about this, you have some who, you know, don't think it's a conspiracy theory type of thing, but when you look at history, there's never been a time that us as a people in the Black community have worked to get ahead, that there's been something done by the FBI or the government or the system as a whole that sets us back, that prevents us from getting ahead. So whether it was slavery, whether it was, desegregation, and all of these things were replaced with mass incarceration. But nowadays, what people don't understand is that reentry is the big business now. We see a lot of these companies like Link, Secures, that all of a sudden that used to charge us these exorbitant fees for phone calls, right? They call home $15, $10 for one phone call, right? 15-minute phone call. Now they want to get into reentry as though they feel, they concerned about reentry. But reentry is the new multi-million, if not billion-dollar business, right? So now they want to get into reentry. So when you speak about, racism and things of that nature, no doubt it plays a role. I mean, if people that don't believe that racism plays a role, then you will believe that black children are inherently created more evil than any other child. That it's just black children that are the most evil and the most violent. But when you look at the numbers, white children, and even when you look at Michelle Alexander book, The New Jim Crow, and she was speaking in there about like when you look at white youth versus black youth, you find that white youth are arrested for drugs and things at higher rates than black youth. However, you find those certified and placed in the system and things of that nature, the percentages are higher with black youth than they are white youth, right? So I mean, when you look at the numbers, I mean, we have always lived in a society that, a racist society, that we always had a fraction that has a fear of our communities prospering, that has a fear of us ever being anywhere on the, making it on the level of white people in this country. So when you look at the criminal justice system, and, the numbers are just alarming. It's alarming. And I know when I was in there, right, before I even started like reading about these things and educating myself about it, the things that struck me the most was when I went to SCI camp, when I first come through the county jail, right, the House of Corrections, the 2 blocks that they had there with us on it, it was like one white kid. And we talking long, straight cell blocks, like, and it was 2 in the walk, and he was on the one like so-called sulfur pod. When I got upstate, and I was classified, I went to SCI Camp Hill, which is the state jail. They send everyone and classify you to your home jail, right? We had maybe almost 30 state prisons at the time, 28 or something. So you would go to Camp Hill and they would classify you to what jail you going to. It was 2 white kids there. One of them killed his father from Montgomery County, beat him to death with a baseball bat. They gave him 17 and a half to 35 years, And here it is, I shot a man that, no doubt, taking up a life is severe in any regard. But I killed someone that was trying to kill me, right? And I'm giving a mandatory life sentence. And it's something I seen throughout my whole incarceration. When it was time to go get resentenced, right? And I went down to a facility close to the home, Chester. They had this white kid there that was a juvenile lifer. Again, it was only a couple of them there that was going to get resentenced. I remember Krasner bringing this guy down for a meeting, right? And trying to understand, he had like a severe case like brutal rape, murder or something, right? And was trying to talk to him before they offered a deal. So I started talking to my lawyers, like, people like, what? How do we not get the advantage of a meeting and, talking to the press? The only person I know that had it, right? So when you look at a lot of these things, it's no doubt it's undeniable that racism definitely plays a role in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I chose to let you talk more about that because as a black man, I feel like you will better understand that. It definitely plays a major part, but white, Asian, it's kind of not not a thing, but it is a thing. It is definitely a thing. I kind of in prison, let's talk about racism while we're inside of prison. I could go ask for something as a black woman, but a white person could go ask for it, and she would get it faster than me. She could get it done faster than I could, and it simply was because of the color of my skin. I really don't know like what to say Cause you summed it all up, in a nutshell. I just don't, it's ridiculous and definitely something needs to be done about it. It needs to be put on the table. I find that people don't really wanna put it on the table. We can talk about this, but let's not talk about this. We can talk about the fact that, oh yeah, they were a child, but let's not talk about the fact that they're gonna be sentenced at a higher rate because they're black. Let's put it on the table and let's talk about it. It really needs to be talked about. It needs to be put out there.
I think that's an amazing call to action, so thank you, both for that. So some people might be familiar, maybe more people not, but there are two really big cases that have dealt with extreme sentences, for children, sort of recently. Miller v. Alabama in 2012, which held that kids can't be given a mandatory, life without parole sentence, and Montgomery, Louisiana in 2016, which applied that retroactively. But of course, kids are still getting life sentences, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that looks like today after those rulings.
I guess like here in North Carolina, it's not moving like as rapidly for relief. We did have the juvenile sentencing review board, but that expired in December, and that was where, as a juvenile, you could go and you could kind of file like a juvenile clemency, in front of the board, and they would decide, based on what you've done and you've accomplished in prison, whether or not you were eligible, for parole. And so I still have a lot of friends who are kind of incarcerated, who were juveniles when their crime happened. I just had a friend who called me recently, probably like 2 weeks ago, and she's like, I got denied, and that's hard. That's hard to be the one who made it out, because everybody won't make it out, and everybody's not really getting the opportunity to have their case heard. That's hard to hear that. You want to offer that support. You want to still accept the phone calls and text them and encourage them, but sometimes it can be overwhelming. And I just feel like the cases need to be heard more. They need to be taken to court. It needs to be pushed. We've been sitting here, we've been waiting for years and years and years are still going by, and cases are still not being heard. Like they're just sitting on the table. So there's really not been a whole lot of movement.
Yeah, so, with Pennsylvania, it's the complete opposite, but you have to understand that Pennsylvania sentenced more children to mandatory life without parole than anywhere in the world, right? I say anywhere in the world because, the United States is the only country, civilized country with government that sentenced children prior to this to mandatory, life without parole, right? And within the United States, Pennsylvania had more child lifers than anywhere, over 500 children sentenced to mandatory life without parole, over 300 of them from Philadelphia, right? And so I was released due to the ruling. Now in the beginning, Miller versus Alabama, when it came out and made it unconstitutional to sentence children to mandatory life without parole, different states applied it differently, right? VA said, oh, it's not retroactive, so they went and they drew up some new statutes because they didn't have parole for lifers at all. A new statute that creating parole eligibility for children under the age of 18 and put all these guidelines. So for instance, me at age 15, if I committed a homicide today at 2012 at 15, I would have been found guilty at first. I would have been sentenced to a mandatory minimum of 35 years to life. That's minimum, right? So when they did this, they tried to X all of us out, right? But then the Supreme Court ruled in the Louisiana decision, Louisiana versus Montgomery, or Montgomery versus Louisiana, in 2016, 4 years later, that it was retroactive, meaning that all of the states gotta apply Miller. You gotta go back and resentence every child that was given a mandatory life without parole sentence. The only way you could sentence them to life, the original ruling was you had to prove that they weren't incorrigible. Not that they haven't been rehabilitated, that they can't be rehabilitated, right? So when they did this, PA replaced our sentences, illegal sentences, with another illegal sentence. They just gave us 21 to life, 30 to life, whatever, some of us had in, and made us do lifetime on parole, right? Now, one of the problems that came, and we seen some racism even in this, because some of the counties that only had 1 or 2 white juvenile lifers, they just let them go, no parole, no nothing, they went home. Now, with the, I lost my train of thought. When it came to, once we got resentenced, and they gave us these sentences and we came home, the problem, not everybody came home. Like, people in Pittsburgh was given like 50-year sentences, 50 to 60 to life, people that I was close with. So they replaced their sentences with de facto life sentences. Some people got resentenced and they didn't make parole. Like, I didn't make parole my first time. I was resentenced in 2019, and I went up for parole and was denied. So I had to go back and see him in 2020. Some people still getting denied, right? Some people were 40 something years in, they keep getting denied. Then you also have those that were not life sentence prisoners per se, like they didn't have a life sentence, right? But they got 90 years, 100 years that were children. They weren't affected by the ruling, so they still in there. And then, most importantly, man, that, like I should say, like, getting the calls and the people you left behind there, the one thing that's most difficult to deal with is the people that, that was killed in there, that never later see a ruling. Children that you grew up with in there, and, that was murdered, that never even lived to see that ruling, to have that hope restored. Some people that I was, real close to, that's difficult. When this ruling came down, not only did you have people that didn't make it, but you have people that's still in there that is difficult. Some of them stopped calling me, because it's difficult for them. They calling me, I'm living life, having family and traveling, and they still in there. They got another 10 years, 15 years. And, it's difficult, man, because, no doubt you here, you got a shot, but you think about all the kids that, that's grown now that didn't get a shot, that died, that'll never get a shot, and the ones that's still in there, you hoping that they can get a shot, So, yeah, the ruling restored a lot of hope. It was a good ruling. Unfortunately, with the new administration, some of these decisions are being rolled back, even when the current president was in office last time, with the Jones decision and other Supreme Court rulings, with these new justices that he appointed, we're going backwards in a lot of ways, and they slowly trying to overturn these decisions, this new Supreme Court.
For those reasons and many reasons, there are so many reasons for us to fight on this issue. And I know you guys both professionally are now working on behalf of people who've been incarcerated. And I think some other issues for these too, right? So I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about reentry, which has come up a couple of times already, and then also with the organizations and the work that you're doing now.
So again, like, re-entry is just hard. It's hard. There's no other way to put it. It's very difficult. When you've never paid a bill, when you've never purchased a car, when you've never been certain places, you've never reserved a room, you just so many things that you've never done, and you have to learn. It's like being a baby, and you have to learn how to walk. You have to learn the words. You have to learn how to talk. You have to learn how to do everything. You have to learn how to live life. You have to learn how to, who am I? Who am I? Yes, I knew who I was in prison. I knew what I was trying to do. I knew my goals. I knew what I wanted to, it's like ultimately get out of prison. But now I'm out here and I'm in a whole new world. And again, I have to figure out, who am I? Where am I going? What do I want to do? What kind of work do I want to get involved in? Do I really want to do this? Because sometimes it can be overwhelming. Right now, we're working on a case of a guy who is sentenced to life without the possibility of parole, and everything about the case says that he did not kill this police officer. But you have to prove it. You have to have the evidence. You have to do the work. And sometimes the work can be overwhelming because it makes me think about my case. It makes me go back to that moment in time of everything happening and the struggle of having an attorney who was on my case for 10 plus years trying to help me get out of prison. Me writing multiple letters to multiple people saying, hey, somebody help me, there's something that can be done. I know there is, but actually getting somebody who's willing to say, we're willing to fight this case for you, we're willing to do that. And so just going back and reviewing the case and going through all of these things, like, I'm making sure, maybe did I miss something? Is there something that I overlooked? Is anything questionable? Is there any stone left unturned? You wanna kind of make sure you get all the facts and you put everything you have into it. And sometimes you can't sleep at night for thinking about that person. His mom recently died. I was fortunate enough that nobody in my family that was immediate passed away while I was in prison, but that's the reality. It's like, how would I feel if I was in there knowing that I was innocent and I have these people helping me, but sometimes you feel like, are they really out there grinding as hard as they say they are? That's really a thought, and we are, but I can't imagine how he feels. You've been in there for 26 years and your mom passes away and people are trying to help you get out. And so that's just what we're focusing on, is trying to help people who have really been wrongfully convicted to get their freedom.
Yeah, so, like she mentioned, it's definitely difficult, like reentry with, like I get calls a lot from people that, when I went in there, they was in there serving life. And I went in and did 23 years, been home almost 5 years, and they still in there serving life. So it's difficult, and reentry is something that I always tell people, no matter how whole people may appear on the outside, nobody leave those places whole. Many of us didn't go in there whole. We went in there with all kinds of, trauma and things that was never addressed. And when we went into those facilities, just imagine a child on the street and how difficult it is in learning how to be a man, or a young girl learning how to be a woman. And you go into an environment where we already had misguided ways of what manhood was before we went in there, right? So now you're in a system where you gotta learn how to be a man on your own. You gotta, know what morals and principles and things to build as a man, which I don't think people understand, right? Which is why I never fought nobody from coming home, excuse my language, and being fucked up from those experiences, right? Because prison really destroys people in ways that when I was in there, I used to see stuff and criticize dudes a lot. I'd be like, oh, you got a pocket, man, this dude did. Then as the years went on, I was like, man, this stuff can destroy me the same way. Like, I gotta be careful of criticizing this person for this or that, because, man, as the years and, went on, you just trying to survive and thrive in an environment that's designed in every way to destroy you. Trying to find growth and development in a system that don't want you to grow and develop. When I went in there, they asked me where did I want my body shipped when I died. That's what they asked me when I went to grade 4 at 16. The address and who to contact when I died. So as a 16-year-old kid, I lived every day in there not caring about dying because I thought I wasn't one of those that, I'm going home one day, right? And a lot of people close to me, used to have a lot of hope of going home. And I got to the point where I was like, man, I do my time better not thinking about ever going home, right? I don't want to think about going home. I don't want to, and people would get mad at me. Like, I would go to the whole stuff, and people like, oh, you could have killed him, man. You'll never go home. Unfortunately, he didn't die. They're like, man, I'm never going home anyway. Y'all keep talking to me about going home. So when you speak about reentry, imagine a kid's mind that these rulings are coming out, and you start looking like, damn, they gonna start letting some of us out, right? And I never forget, I used to do a lot of writing in there. I spent a lot of time in solitary. I used to spend years in solitary. You don't got nothing to read or write, or nothing to sell, right? And I remember writing this letter to the American Prison Writing Archive, and I came across it recently, online actually. And I put it there, I said, these rulings, I don't, the Miller, I don't know how the courts are gonna look to an individual like me, right? That has a lot of violence and assaults and, on paper, I still look like I'm violent, but for those who know me, they commend me for my growth and development and are not allowing the system to destroy me. But the courts, I don't know if they can understand the mind of a 15-year-old child trying to navigate this world, right? And when all of these things were going on, I started fearing that I'm not going to be one of the ones that get out. They only going to let the best of the best out. I had a 4 to 8 for stabbing the guard, running consecutive to my life sentence. I had another 4 to 8 for assault on the guard, running consecutive. I had a 1.5 to 5 for assault on the guard, another one. Altogether, I had almost 10 to 20 years of time on top of my life sentence. So my first offer was like 40-something years. I denied it, then it was 35 years. I denied it. They gave me a deal for 28 years. I had 19 in. The judge denied it, said it was too low. So I fought it and ended up getting time served. And when I came, when they first was releasing me, it just seemed so surreal. I remember getting to the lobby and it was like, is that your family over there in the SUV? So I'm looking, I'm like, I don't know. Like, well, go ahead. So I can walk out. I don't know if I thought I was supposed to sign something, but it was going to pat me down for I never, I didn't know what was going on. Like, I'm just sitting there waiting for somebody in the guard to turn around, like, go ahead, man. That's it. I just walk out the door. Like, yeah, I walked in the parking lot. And it was like the most surreal feeling. Everybody was so confused because I wasn't crying or anything. But the one thing I noticed when I first came out, I looked up and I was at SCI Fayette. And I was there twice. I did my most time in Fayette. They had an SMU there, Special Management Unit. I remember being there in 2010, and I was locked down in the hole for 2 years. And they sent me to the Supermax at Green, and Green sent me back there. I looked up at the cell facing the parking lot, and remember I was in that end cell. I used to watch the visitors coming in. I used to watch the shift change, right? And I had life then. That was 2010. And I remember pulling up the hill and looking each side, like always wondering what was each side of the road, like I could never see past the hill. So that was my first memory of being released and dealing with reentry. But since I've been home, I actually was working in construction. I was building bridges for the first maybe 3.5 years. I just quit last year. That's a whole nother story. But I got introduced into that through my sister's boyfriend that was a foreman with a major company that I started doing highway concrete paving at first. Highway concrete paving. Then I did that like 4 months. I went to another company as a bridge laborer. In the beginning, just demo and rebuilding bridges, and then later on getting into rehabbing bridges and things of that nature. And I started working part-time for YSRP. About 3 years ago, we started a pilot project, the Speakers Bureau, a group of formerly incarcerated children sentenced to mandatory life without parole. I was the Speakers Bureau coordinator, spoke with colleges and, local in Philly. So I did that for a couple years. And I quit the bridge thing and flipped over to YSRP full-time December 1st as Speakers Bureau policy coordinator. So now I do 50% like Speakers Bureau stuff like this, and other 50% policy work. So we have a policy director, Margot Isman, that used to work and, do policy work for a state rep in another state as an aide. And, she teach me and train me, a lot. And, we working with legislators to change some of these laws. We have a bill pending an indirect file. We're practicing PA of children being automatically charged as adults. They got me automatically charged as an adult. We got some bills pending about solitary confinement. Of course, my experience with years of solitary confinement. I speak to the legislators about the harms of solitary and isolation, especially for children. We go into the jail, down the county jail where I was housed at, speaking to the youth there. We do your rights program through University of Penn law students in conjunction with one of the lawyers at YSRP. We go in there on state road with kids that's locked up for homicide and stuff, now charged as adults. helping them out. So I'm doing a little bit of everything. It's like with me flipping over full time, it's kind of expanding some of the stuff that we doing. So it's kind of, I haven't fully got settled into my new role of being full time. But we have a lot of exciting things planned for this year. In regards to speaking engagements, podcasts, radio shows, and things of that nature. So, we're excited about this year and hoping that, we can be more effective. When we was in those places and, people always spoke for us. And a lot of times the experts, really don't know what they're talking about. People speaking about our communities, it's not from our communities. Speaking about the criminal justice system and people that never even been inside of a prison even, know what the conditions are like in there, right? So now, us coming home, we in a unique position, being from the state that had the most child lifers, the city that had the most lifers, a city that had more lifers than most whole states, right? That we have a duty or obligation not only to help make the system better for the children that follow behind us and help to prevent them from ever having to go through that adult system, right? But also we have a duty, I think, to expose a lot of the things that hasn't really been exposed on the level that they should. I think that society really needs to know and understand what goes on behind those prison walls, and it's important from more than just one aspect, from the aspect of humanity, and people shouldn't be in prison and treated this way, right? But what is this doing to make our communities more safe or more whole? We sending people to prison and they coming home worse. The majority of prison people go to prison and coming home, right? So we sending them in these environments and they coming back home more violent, more angry, filled with more trauma. What is this doing to our societies, right? So, yeah.
You guys are doing such amazing work, and we're so grateful that you're here to talk about it and share with us. I think if it's okay with you guys, we have a couple of minutes for Q&A.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. So a few minutes for questions if anybody has any.
Well, I have a question. I also wanted to start a little bit with just some, we're talking about the state of juvenile life without parole. So in North Carolina, 95 people have ever been sentenced to life without parole for stuff they did as kids. And to Kolanda's point, 23 of those people are still waiting almost 13 years later for a hearing. They haven't even had a hearing on their Miller versus Alabama claim yet. The other sad fact is that of those 95 people, 91.6% of them are kids of color. So this is not a sentence that North Carolina gives out to white kids. Just statistically speaking, they don't want to do it, and so they don't do it. So those are my depressing statistics. One of the questions I had was, you guys were talking about your initial investigation, and Kolanda, you were talking a lot about your conversations you had with the police. Shariff, it sounds like you had fewer conversations with them. Who was in the room with you all when you were having these conversations with law enforcement, if anyone?
It was just me and the two investigators, and then my mom came, and she didn't get there until like an hour later, and she's like, this is illegal, y'all cannot be questioning my child who is a minor without me as an adult in the room with her. But we had probably already been here a good hour.
Well, they had me handcuffed in the interrogation room for 2 days. I was never in a holding cell. So the first 24 hours, they interrogated me by themselves. They would wait till I would fall asleep on the table, wasn't nowhere else to sleep. Sometimes they'd go, hey, they wake me up, and I'd be, come here, sit down, they'd pull the tight. They start trying to talk to me and I just start playing along with them, like, yeah, like, you ready to give a statement? And I, I didn't do it, and they'd get mad, leave, come back. And then the next day, they tried a different tactic where they brought my mom in. And she was all crying, and I started crying, but I caught on immediately what they was doing. So they tried different tactics throughout those 2 days. They brought my mom in there for like maybe 20 minutes the next day. And then they left out, and of course was behind the glass listening to us talk. And then when she left, they interrogated me again.
I was gonna ask a question based on something you said, Shariff, about infractions in prison. And a lot of us that have been doing this work, dealing with infractions on people's records is really complicated because we look at the record and we're like, yeah, of course, like, first of all, the vast majority of infractions are just ridiculous, like profane language, sexual acts, and things like that are hurting your chances of parole and clemency. And then the other half, like you said, of course, it's a violent institution. It's you're in a mode of survival, things like that. So I'm curious. One, I'd like to hear about what your attorneys did to put those infractions into context, because I think that's something that could be really helpful for those of us doing that work here. And also, just if you had advice for lawyers or folks that are coming to speak with you or work with you about talking about those infractions and dealing with those infractions in a way that recognizes your autonomy and doesn't place unnecessary blame on you for these things that are completely understandable.
Yeah, so I will preface that what I'm about to say by, Lauren actually was the one who represented me. I mean, she, not necessarily my mitigator, but she has a lot of inside knowledge of how they were able to navigate that. But I will, in summarizing, what YSRP, what Lauren and Joanna did when they started YSRP, initially was solely for what you're saying, mitigation work, right? I had a mitigator there that's still there, Andy, right? The one that helped get me out. We actually have offices next to each other now. She, and I had a volunteer, Danita, that was from down here in North Carolina, that was in law school in Delaware, Wooten at the time. She's now a public defender in Philly. She literally came down here, met with Virginia, North Carolina, interviewed family. All of the trauma that I spoke about, my mitigators and lawyers looked it up. Like when I spoke about my friends being murdered and all that, one of my lawyers was like, this, all these stories is like, some of this stuff, just let me start. And she started going investigating, and it was like, it admitted, it was like, I just thought some of this stuff was just too much, but I started finding articles. Like she looked and found the article in the Philadelphia magazine called Murky Waters about the whole investigation, of like a 15-page article about their murders and the mystery. Until this day, nobody know what happened, right? So they did extensive school records. They interviewed DOC employees, right? You know, and found the ones that when they interviewed that was like, oh yeah, Shariff, XYZ, that was beneficial. So they only used the things that would help you. I was evaluated, they hired a criminologist, Jennifer Wynn, out of LaGuardia University. And I was evaluated to see, you know, my risk of reoffending and all of that, right, by a professional, right? And she said in her report that my rate of reoffending and percentage is low. And any more time in prison will only do me more harm, that my resilience is not unlimited, and you know, spoke about all that technical stuff, right? So we did all this. We had 2 guards that testified for me. We had a captain, a shift commander that testified for me, a CCPM who was right underneath of the deputy that testified for me. A sergeant wrote a letter for me, keeping in mind that mostly all my violence was against guards, right? And these are prison officials, right? And that helped a lot. I had an altercation right before I got resentenced, and we used them to speak about that, the prison officials. And then in regards to my case itself, my trial lawyer came to my resentencing. My old trial lawyer that I filed ineffective sentencing counsel against back in 99, 98, and admitted to the judge, we made a lot of mistakes. This is one of the cases, Your Honor, that haunts me to this day. This wasn't a first-degree murder case. This individual was, you know, a grown man, and of course, I didn't want to go and give blame on it, but and my lawyer didn't. But this lawyer, my old lawyer, testifying to it, helped the judge get more of the facts of the case than what was being presented. You know, he was a drug dealer. He was shooting at my client. He had other individuals shooting at him. It was a thing where he was gunning for him for over a course of months. It wasn't just like he shot at him and it, you know. So all of these things helped me to the point that when I got resentenced, the judge said, this is a travesty. This is a young man that probably never should have been convicted of first-degree murder to begin with. You know, it's more like third-degree murder, which would have been a 5 to 10 year sentence versus a 23. So yeah, did that answer your question? I got kind of lost in your answer.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Or my answer.
So we are at time. I want to, like, an immense thank you to Shariff and Kolanda. We really appreciate you being here and sharing everything and making other people in the room be advocates in the future. So thank you all for coming.
Yeah, I thank you all for having us. You know, I'm always honored to speak with people that's, you know, passionate about these, especially when you're talking about people that don't be from our communities. I always say this, right? You know, when we find people that are not from our community, I don't know everyone here where they're from, but you know, it's always coming home. And Lauren knows this. Like Lauren, one of my favorite people. Her and Joanne is, you know, we can never put one above the other. Like right there, it's hard to mention one and not mention the other, like literally. But you know, it's always it's a beautiful thing to come home, man, and see like people like Lauren still doing the work and being somewhere like here with all of these students and other teachers and people. Like, you know, y'all have Lauren, that's like an invaluable asset. She come from a city where she done met, you know, many people like me, represented people like me, worked with people like me, helped a lot of people like me. So I just want to end with that and knowing that y'all have Lauren here, tremendous asset and understanding, you know, these issues. Lauren been working with people like me for way before she even met me, you know. So I thank y'all for having me. I'm honored. I thank Lauren for connecting me. And you know, yeah, I encourage, you know, everyone here, man, to really, you know, help to be a part of the solution and changing the system, you know, because it's going to take a collective effort, not just the formerly incarcerated people, not just the people from our communities. You know, it's going to take a collective effort, and I'm confident that it's going to take time. It's not going to be easy. But the fact that I'm here is a testament to how much things can change, and the ability when you have people that fight and put forth the effort and the means. So, you know, I'm humbled by this experience, and, you know, thank you.
Thank you guys. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm going to give you all a little bit of insight on, you know, people out here. We're going to get back with y'all a little bit later. Peace and love.